The twin countershaft transmission consists of main box of transmission, rear cover assembly of auxiliary box, top cover housing, double edge shifting control assembly, assembly of clutch housing, twin countershaft assembly, input shaft assembly, main shaft assembly, driving gears assembly, reverse countershaft assembly, countershaft brake assembly, assembly of cover of input shaft bearing, assembly of transmission housing. 6 double-headed bolts are installed at the front part of the housing. The bottom PTO windows has installed with the cover and 8 bolts, 2 double-headed bolts, 3 magnets, and 2 locating pins were installed at the rear end of the top of the transmission housing. Install the double-headed bolts of the housing of main box and housing of clutch. It can be installed by specialized tools or by 2 nuts. Install the rear suspension with 2 bolts by specialized tools or 2 nuts. Toggle the cover from the bottom PTO window with 8 bolts. Stick 3 magnets to the bottom of the housing with mucus. Mount the 2 locating pins at the rear parts of the transmission housing with the prick facing back, then lock it into the hole from the rear end until the front head is equally high as the brim. Countershafts: a semicircular key, a spring cylinder pin, a long key, first speed gear of the countershaft, second speed gear of the countershaft, third speed gear of the countershaft, PTO gears of the countershaft, fourth speed gear of the countershaft. Left PTO gear has 47 teeth and right PTO gear has 45 teeth. The marked datum tooth is the one correspondent with the single key of the countershaft. Install semicircular key, spring cylinder pin, cubic long key, the inclining surface downward. The assembling of the countershaft assembly is to be conducted on the 25T pressing machine. Put the first speed gear onto the countershaft with the convex upward, press it down. Put the second speed gear onto the countershaft with the convex downward, press it down. Put the third speed gear onto the countershaft with the convex upward, press it down. Put the PTO gear onto the countershaft with the convex downward, press it down. Put the fourth speed gear onto the countershaft with the convex downward, press it down. Input shaft, gears of the input shaft, 14750 stop ring, input shaft bearing, bearing stop ring, main shaft guide sleeve, gasket for gears, nuts of the input shaft. Put the main shaft guide sleeve into the hole of input shaft. Install the 14750 stop ring into snap ring groove of the first speed gear. Mount gears onto the input shaft with the contact tooth downward. Add bearings and gaskets for gears. Baste some sealing mucus on the screw thread and screw it down. Knock the nut so as to make it wedged into the 2 milled grooves. When screw down the nuts, be careful not to damage the extrinsic circular of the input shaft so as to avoid oil leakage. Mark random 2 conterminous teeth with red paint, then mark the 2 180-degree opposite teeth with red paint. Check the main shaft all around to see if there is any abrasion. With ball head driver, install the stop ring into the groove of spline hole on 3rd speed gear on main shaft. With ball head driver, install the stop ring into the groove of spline hole on 2nd speed gear on main shaft. With ball head driver, install the stop ring into the groove of spline hole on 1st speed gear on main shaft. With ball head driver, install the stop ring into the groove of spline hole on the crawling gear on main shaft. The stop ring in the reverse gear of the main shaft cannot be installed at this time, or the assembly cannot be put in the main box. There are 2 wide grooves at the back of the reverse gear, different from other gears. After finishing the installment of spline stop rings on the main shaft gears, then the spline gaskets should be installed in turns. 5 spline gaskets and 5 stop rings can be interchanged. There's no direction demand. The 3 sliding clutches can be interchanged. In maintenance, if the synchronizing angle of sliding clutch is severely abraded, it can be posed between crawl and reverse gears. On the sliding clutch, the wide groove of spline should be aiming at the 2 key grooves of the pinholes on main shaft. Location of the sliding clutches and the hex key on main shaft should be like this. The adjusting gasket on the main shaft is presented as one name. As one figure, in fact there are 6 different thicknesses. They are distinguished by different colors, and you can choose the suitable one. The thickness is between 6.30 mm and 6.99 mm. There are altogether 5 adjusting gaskets within the main shaft assembly. When the color of the old gasket tarnished, use the calipers to measure its thickness. Take down the record and make a mark. This is a caliper to install main shaft assembly. The magnet at the bottom is used to prevent hex key from sliding down. The process can be conducted on the pliers platform or something suitable without clamps. Start to assemble main shaft. Find out the hole on main shaft, make it face toward the assembling personnel, and fix main shaft straight with clipper. Take the thickest gasket with the convex side upward, put it through the top of main shaft to the first wide horizontal groove and rotate it. Pull the hex key through from bottom and fix the adjusting gasket. Make the wide groove of the first sliding clutch aims at the hole of main shaft. Install sliding clutch to the gasket, move hex key upward until the top of it can be seen. Install the gasket for the crawl gear. Pull the gasket through to the second wide groove. With its convex side downward, rotate the gasket, move the hex key upward. The adjusting gasket's convex side face sliding clutch, the flat side face spline gasket. Install crawl gear and the gaskets for spline onto main shaft with the contact teeth downward, facing sliding clutch. Embrace the spline gasket with fingers so as to prevent it from dropping out. Install the first speed gear and the spline gasket onto the main shaft with the contact teeth upward. Load the adjusting gasket with convex side upward. Embrace the adjusting gasket with needle point of 2 ball head driver and rotate it. Move the hex key upward. Post wide groove of the second sliding clutch aiming at main shaft key groove. Install it downward. Choose suitable adjusting gasket so as to gain the